Support for this episode is provided by Pennsylvania College of Art and Design and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Lancast. I'm David Moulton.
And I'm Keith Slesser. This episode we speak with Mike Witmer, the creative mind behind the webcomic Pinkerton.
It's been about 2 years since Mike was last on the show, and since then, he actually stepped away from comics for about a year, and we talked to him a little bit about why he did that.
Life gets in the way, so I started making decisions that seemed like better priorities, but once I kind of stopped doing it, I mean, from the moment that I stopped drawing Pinkerton and running the reruns and even not running reruns, I just felt like I should still be doing it, you know what I mean?
Now that Mike is back in the comic business, he does things a little different. One of said things is the way he draws the comic.
But on top of that, I had this learning curve of acclimating myself to the digital, because I use a bamboo tablet. It's a Wacom. It's just a digital tablet. It plugs into my Mac, and I draw on the tablet. So there's some differences there, because when you draw on paper, obviously you're looking down at the paper, you see your line going. Well, when you're drawing on the tablet, your hand's down here and it's drawing, but you're looking straight ahead on the screen and you're watching the lines go. So that was difficult to get used to. And quite honestly, I'm still kind of working all that out. But it's kind of exciting at the same time, because it's a new medium for me, and I'm finding different ways to get things done or express myself.
Enjoy the conversation. Well, Mike, welcome back to the show.
Howdy.
It's been almost 2 years since we talked to you.
I cannot believe it's been that long.
I know. I looked up the when you were on, and I was like, wow, that was a while ago.
It seems to me like I've never even spoken to you before.
It's so true.
Reverse deja vu.
It's just perception, I think, for sure.
So weird. I remember you having more of a beard then, too.
Yeah.
I
did. I probably seemed more intelligent, too, didn't I?
Was it the beard? Was it the beard that gave you the smarts?
Well, you do a comic strip called Pinkerton, and for some of our listeners that might not have been around 2 years ago, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Pinkerton started out as kind of the 180 degree from what I was doing before. I was working on a comic strip. My first comic strip was called 44 Union Avenue. It was very family oriented, and it was very kind of it was easy. You know what I mean? It was simple to people, and it was all ages and all that fun stuff. And my goal with that was just to get print syndication. And the more I kept running up against the wall, I just kind of came to the conclusion that it wasn't going to work. So when I started Pinkerton, rather than doing what I thought would sell, I just decided to write what I wanted to write. And so Pinkerton is about it's about four animals that live in Pinkerton National Park, and they basically spend their time getting into trouble and drinking and doing dumb stuff.
So basically, it sounds like a normal group of four animals in any park, right?
Well, I mean, I
drinking and you know.
I said this before, but I kind of write it around when I think of these characters. I draw them like the type of people that I'd want to hang out with, and then I just make them into animals. You know what I mean? And
so they're based on us.
Well, yeah, they're based on. You know, I mean, when guys get together, they do stupid stuff, and that's just what happens. They just take it a little more extreme. And as I get older and I'd like to say wiser, but I'm not getting any wiser. But as I experience more things, I kind of roll them into the comic strip as well. So I can take some of my quote unquote parental experiences and write them into that as well. But it's always geared around trying to make people laugh. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of comic strips that are very serious and very kind of deep thinking. I'm not one of those.
Well, one of the things that we talked about when you were here last time, and I think it was off air, But it inspired me to go on a drawing spree, and I've been trying to draw here and there ever since. So thanks, I guess, for torturing me with that desire.
I'm sorry.
But you told me, and I think I quoted you on this, and you were 2011's my favorite episode from 2011, and you said, I was talking about how I can't draw people, and so I just always gave up. And then you said you had that same problem, and then someone said, "Why don't you draw animals?"
Well, I went that direction for exactly that reason, and I'll tell you why. The hardest thing in my mind to draw on people are feet and hands.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's just
Absolutely.
especially with a comic strip. I mean, it's, you know. So when I started Pinkerton, I made it kind of abstract, like the hands are very boxy and stuff. So there's no point of reference, but I used to get so pissed off when I was trying to draw just simple hand gestures and stuff like that. You know, I've never had problems with facial expressions, but try to get a good hand gesture down, and it makes me nuts. I drew, 2 nights ago, I was working on a comic strip where Buckley was shaking hands with somebody, and I drew those two hands together at least 10 times, and I was cussing. I was just yelling at the ceiling.
It's funny because like I would always, when I sit and sketch or draw on my, I was drawing like a clown one time.
Yeah.
And if you look through my sketchbook, you can see my learning curve and where I get frustrated because I'm drawing this clown and he's like standing like with one hand over his head and one hand on his hip, and you can just see my hands. I'm just like, you see all the erase marks, and I'm just like, I can't get the hands right. And then you flip over, and the next like 10 pictures are just hands, because I was trying to like study and figure out how to draw a hand, and they're all really good drawings of hands. But then when I go back and try and put them on a body, I still can't do it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, hands and feet can go really wrong really fast. So. One of my goals was to design the characters in a way that there was no reference point to the real world, you know what I mean? So, like I said, I made them all kind of boxy and goofy, and they only have 4 fingers on each hand instead of 5. Like, I did as much as I could to avoid getting into that rut again. So that's where I ended up. And I've noticed, like, not so much the hands, but the way I draw feet has evolved a little bit from when I look at it old Pinkerton strips and new Pinkerton. I mean, the style in general has evolved, but I think the feet have evolved the most, and I think that's probably just me finding comfort in being okay with drawing horrible feet.
You also sometimes just remove the arms completely.
Oh yeah, I got, and I don't know where I picked that up from. I think it might have been from Peanuts, because Snoopy, there was times when Snoopy would be sitting there and you wouldn't see feet, or you wouldn't see. So I always thought that was kind of cool. And it wasn't a conscious effort to avoid drawing hands. I just thought it looked kind of cool, because when I the very first time I sketched out the characters, they didn't have, it was just their heads on this little kind of Play-Doh-y body, and I really liked how that looked, so I just kind of kept going with it,
Well, the main reason that we've got you coming back, not just because we think you're awesome, but you quit for a while. You quit Pinkerton, and now you're back. So I'd kind of like to talk about why you stopped doing it.
Well, it was, I guess the politically correct way to put it is, I was signed with a publisher for a long time, and to their kind of defense, they had bigger titles and they were making money with them, and they were a very small publisher, but I just wasn't. I had all these ideas for things that I wanted to get done, and they just kind of never happened, and it started getting very frustrating for me because, you can draw comic strips all day, but there has to be some way to kind of get your product out to the masses and make a little bit of money on the return. And it just seemed like every idea I kind of threw at him, it didn't get rejected. It just never happened. You know what I mean? So I got frustrated, and then on top of that, life gets in the way. So I started making decisions that seemed like better priorities. But once I kind of stopped doing it, I mean, from the moment that I stopped drawing Pinkerton and running the reruns, and even not running reruns, I just felt like I should still be doing it. You know what I mean? So I decided to when I decided to go get back into it, the first thing I did was I talked to my publishers, and they've always been very, very good to me on a personal level. You know what I mean? Very nice guys. And I just said, look, you know, I want to do this, but I want to do it right. And I know you guys are swamped, and I'd rather just kind of let's part ways and do what we have to do. And they were very cool about it, and that kind of fueled my creativity even a little more. You know, it kind of gave me the freedom. And it's nice to. At first, I thought going into a publisher would be good because it was somebody would have my back, somebody to do some of the heavy lifting for me. But it's nice to be able to say that if this falls over again, it's nobody else's fault but mine. You know, so that's kind of where I am right now. And I've even been toying with the fact. I mean, and I'm hoping that it's not just a trend, but I've been toying with the fact of going 5 times a week because I'm generating that much like writing and that much kind of content and stuff. So hopefully it works out in that direction. I'd really love to kind of do it right this time, you know.
How long were you down for?
I never really went down the whole way. Like I just kind of, for the last probably year, I've been posting. There was no kind of structure to it. I posted when I felt like posting. Mm-hmm. I'd post reruns. I'd post this. I'd post that. And thankfully, when I came back, I mean, I definitely have a lot of work to do as far as building an audience. But there's a decent base out there that kind of just waited for me to show up again, which was a little disturbing, but it you know.
So like, it wasn't like a Michael Jordan thing where you just said you were retiring and then came back.
Well, when I decided
just to build,
to come back,
don't call it a comeback though.
I made an announcement that I was quitting, and quite honestly, it was the fact that I didn't think my publishers would let me out of the deal that I had, so I was going to quit Pinkerton and start a new strip. But then as soon as I made that announcement, they reached out to me, and I told them what was going on there, and we came to that agreement. So there I am looking like an asshole saying, hey, I'm leaving, and then a couple weeks later I'm coming back. But that's pretty much why. You know, I was committed to a contract with them, and I felt like I didn't think it would go well if I tried to get out of that contract, so I figured I should probably wrap it up and either do something else or take a break and come back. But they were, like I said, they were very, very cool to it, and they, you know, they've always been very supportive, and they're very supportive of other webcomics. I mean, but they're doing really well with a couple titles, and I honestly don't blame them for where they're focusing their attention because that's where the money's coming in at, you know.
Right.
So
right. So during this year, did you feel rejuvenated? Just kind of slowly put stuff out when you did, and
no, I feel more right now doing the comic strip than I did when I wasn't doing it. You know what I mean? Which, you know.
Where do you were saying, like, adding your kids and stuff into where do you get your inspiration? Like, you're saying you want to try and do this like 5 days a week, have something up. What I know when I think about drawing a cartoon or a comic strip, trying to do it every day, I think that would never happen. Like, what? Well,
the drawing's not, to me, the drawing is not,
or the story, I guess.
Yeah, the drawing's not the hard part. It's coming up with the storylines. And what amazes me about is the cartoonists that write the single gag a day. Like I've always been able to take a storyline and continue it on and write jokes based on the last thing. But if I had to come up with unrelated gags a day, I would be screwed. I just couldn't do it. I messed around with single panel strips once in a while and just couldn't swing it. So my kind of inspiration is based on kind of the storyline and that challenge of what are the characters going to do next. I really like to get inside the head of these characters and make sure, figure out how they would respond to those types of things. The characters all have little bits and pieces of me, you know what I mean? Like, which sounds a little schizophrenic, I guess. I don't know, but so I probably relate more to Martin than anybody. he's like the nerdy kind of he's the moose. He's a nerd, and he's always frustrated with the people doing stupid shit around him. So I mean, I relate to him more than anything. And I just use inspiration from stuff that I run into every day on how I'm going to go with the storyline, you know. So I don't know exactly where it comes from. I guess I'm just a good bullshitter or something.
And do you do this full time, or is this?
No, this is I have a day job, so I try to I get a lot of work done on the weekends, and I'm a night owl as it is. I mean, I even when I wasn't doing the strip, I would just be up till 12 o'clock, 12:30 at night, just doing nothing. So
Figured may as well draw.
yeah. The bad thing is when I get really into it, if I'm really drawn, there's been times I've looked up and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, oh, and I got to go to work at 7 the next day.
Oh, bummer.
So yeah, so I go to work feeling like a bag of ass, and it's just it's just terrible.
Something that I don't think we talked about before was your color palette. Mm-hmm. The strip, when you do add color to it, it's very, very colorful, and it fits it fits the world. It's not necessarily the normal colors that you would think for that I would think with like a park. Like it's the different kinds of blues and stuff. How do you choose that kind of palette?
Well, I'm partially colorblind, so that's probably part of it. Oh. I literally have to when I've come up with like the colors for the characters.
Yeah, or even the background.
I have to reference them like from a previous strip. I have to like pull them up, and because I'm partially colorblind to the point where I have some trouble telling apart the browns and the greens, and I have trouble telling apart the blues and purples. So that's why some of my colors are a little wacky. I mean, they look okay to me, and then other people are like, "Whoa!"
Looks like blue and green to him, but to everybody else, they're going, "Why the hell did he put brown and purple?"
I'm not totally colorblind, but it's just some of the real close colors, like like the violets and the dark blues and that kind of stuff. It's just I have to really look hard at them to see them. Like I spent 10 years in the military, and I was probably in the service for about 4 years. And I'm sitting in an office chair, and I got my camouflage pants on, and I look down and I'm like, "Holy shit! There's brown in my camouflage pants." And I'd never seen it before, but as soon as I recognized it, then there it was. You know what I mean? So I don't have a rhyme or reason for how I come up with the colors. I just kind of throw them up there and hope that they look okay. You know what I mean?
I think it fits because it adds this like kind of off kilter view to you get that these are some wacky characters, and they're kind of in this like normal world, but at the same time these colors kind of make you think, oh, it's a little bit of a wacky world.
I'm on an acid trip.
That's what David's going with. He thinks it's pretty much a
drug induced.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I read Pinkerton, I'm always completely high.
See,
all right.
See, we were all like really excited, thinking like, man, he's like so deep in how he thinks and putting these colors in and everything. And here's you're colorblind.
I think I spend more time worrying about like the facial expressions and how they're going to react than I do anything else. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I've always been such a huge fan of the comic strips that are drawn well. You know what I mean? There's a lot of web comics out there that you can tell they draw it once and they copy it and cut and paste it into the next frame, and which who the hell am I to judge? You know what I mean? But for me, I've always been a fan of the artwork that I look at, and I'm like, how in the hell did they do that? You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I come from with it.
Well, it is time to go to break, so we're going to do that. When we come back, we'll have more with Mike Witmer. Hey, everybody. We're here at Penn Cinema to find out what everyone's been talking about. Excuse me, why do you choose Penn Cinema?
I like the seats. They're really comfy. They're a lot nicer than most other places. Even my house.
Oh, this place is great. I mean, it's popcorn. Got some. We got a slushy machine over there. We got 3 clocks. 3 clocks for the Lidditz, the Lancaster, and the F at a time, just in case you don't know what time it is in your area. That's why I love this place. They think about everybody. Very friendly.
Has a nicer environment.
It's clean and comfortable. It feels independent.
You know, like, it doesn't feel like part of a system. Like, it feels like as big as it is and as polished as it is, that it feels independent, you know?
Bigger screen, better quality.
So it's really close. It's very clean. We come here all the time.
What do you like about Penn Cinema?
The seats are my favorite thing. Very comfortable. On the rump.
3D IMAX, the whole shebang.
It has a down-home feel, and we love the atmosphere that Penn has created. He really tries to take into account what people want in a theater.
It's really clean, and the seats are really comfy. Yeah, I like the seats. It's the best movie theater to come to.
Well, you've heard what they have to say. Now come see for yourself. Check out Penn Cinema for first-class movies in a first-rate theater. Located at 541 Airport Road in Lidditz, PA.
All right, we're back with Mike. Mike, let's talk a little bit about medium. What do you use to draw your characters? Or there's a couple different ways you used to and the way you do now.
Yeah, now it's all digital. When I first started and through up until very recently, it was I would, traditional pen, pencil, paper, and then scan it in. I've always used the computer for like lettering and like the fills and stuff like that. But when I decided to, before I took my hiatus, if you want to call it that, I started dabbling with the digital a little bit, but it was more just out of curiosity. So when I came back, not only was there this kind of, I had to get back into the groove of, because there's a rhythm that goes on to creating comics and getting in that mode and being able to find that kind of spot where you can tune everybody else. But on top of that, I had this learning curve of acclimating myself to the digital, because I use a bamboo tablet. It's a Wacom. It's just a digital tablet that plugs into my Mac, and I draw on the tablet. And so there's some differences there, because when you draw on paper, obviously you're looking down at the paper, you see your line going. Well, when you're drawing on the tablet, your hand's down here and it's drawing, but you're looking straight ahead on the screen and you're watching the lines go. So that was difficult to get used to. And quite honestly, I'm still kind of working all that out. But it's kind of exciting at the same time, because it's a new medium for me, and I'm finding different ways to get things done or express myself, or just the line works even different. If you look at the strips that are out now and then go back a year and look at them, you'll see a definite difference in the way the lines are. And most people don't notice it right away, but if you hold them up side by side, you notice. And I probably shouldn't be telling you guys that now, because everybody's going to go back and look at my stuff and say, "Man, your stuff sucks now."
I used to follow Get Fuzzy, and you can see a huge difference. I have his original book, and then the stuff that's out now. Just the way the characters are drawn are total. I mean, they look very different.
Even, Rob has evolved.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, just from what he was to what he is now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, when I talk to my friends about it, or when I talk to them, I say, go back and look at the first 10 strips and then look at the ones now. And I've every once in a while I'll go back and look at them, and I'm just like, oh god, it makes me dizzy. I want to fall down and hit my head on the floor.
So would you say drawing digitally is easier?
It's
faster, maybe.
It's more convenient.
Okay.
There are some drawbacks to it. The nice thing about drawing on paper is you have an original that if you want to ever sell it to somebody, like, there are people that like that kind of stuff, and they ask me for stuff from time to time. But at the same token, then you have all those originals that laying around your house. I have Tupperware boxes. Between Pinkerton and 44 Union Avenue, I probably have 4,000 or 5,000 comic strips laying around.
Wow.
And just in boxes and so there's always that kind of fear of, what if the house burns down, or So with digital, I've got the backups and the backups and all that fun stuff. But you don't have that tangible, hold it in my hand and see the drawing, that kind of thing. So it's kind of a balancing act between the two. I don't know. There's something special about drawing on paper. Like when I was recently at the Baltimore comic convention, so I was doing sketches for people, and there's really nothing quite like drawing on a piece of paper and then watching it kind of evolve. But
yeah, I gotta say, I've only touched on the drawing on computer a little bit, and my program sucked that I had, so that was probably a big part of why I didn't. I didn't like it. I couldn't use it, but I think a lot of it had to do with I had a very crappy program.
Well, and if you have a tablet or something that allows you to use like a pressure sensitivity, like the way I work now in Photoshop is I have brush settings that are pressure sensitive. So the harder I press on the tablet, the thicker the line I'll get, and so it's very kind of brush like, which I didn't use before. I used mechanical pens before, so the lines were very kind of sharp and kind of almost, they weren't as fluid as they are now. So there's some cool things that are happening as I kind of learn how to do this and get the hang of it. And I think that the artwork's going to evolve a little faster than it has been because it's a totally new medium, totally new approach. But we'll see. I don't know.
I always look at the tablets and I think, oh, they're so small. Like they're not the size of a normal large piece of paper.
Well, that's what I thought too. But like my tablet is probably 10 by 7 inches, and
that's a decent size.
Yeah, and but it'll cover the whole way across the screen. I would love to get. Have you seen the Cintiq? That's just a big monitor, and you can draw on the monitor.
Oh yeah.
I can't afford them, but they're cool as hell.
I've seen some artists draw right on their, like they have like iPads and stuff, and they draw these like crazy detailed things just on their iPads. I'm like, whoa, that's insane.
Wow,
but.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Thanks for humoring me there. So how big do you draw? Because that's one of the things when I was trying to emulate some of the stuff that you were doing, I was like, for me to draw as tiny as the strip is, like I'm just gonna go big. That's what
when I drew, and that's another thing that's really cool about doing digital, because you can zoom in to whatever size you want. But when I drew my originals, when I drew on paper, my originals were a lot larger than anybody else I said, because they were 16 inches wide.
Oh wow!
So they were fairly large compared to, like, I know people that draw their comics on like 8.5 by 11 paper. You know what I mean? And I see it and I'm like, how in the hell are you? How did you know? And they letter it on there, and that's just crazy. I can't understand it. So my originals are very large, and I have the freedom on digital to zoom in to make it as large as I want. I mean, I could draw a character standing way far away and zoom in so much that I could detail him just like he was if he was standing close. I mean, it wouldn't be able to see it, but you know what I mean? It's just kind of some of the freedom that's nice about that. It's also nice from a digital perspective to be able to erase your line work. You know what I mean? Like when you use ink or mechanical pens or whatever, once you put the line down, if you screw it up, you either have to find some way to correct it, or start over or whatever. I mean, I used to go through, when I first started, I used to go through quite a bit of whiteout because I'd screw up a line and I'd use the whiteout to fix it and then scan it and all that stuff. So that's kind of some of the convenient sides of doing it digital too.
You have complete control over everything. Yeah.
So it's actually it's kind of nice because when you're doing it the way I used to do it, you have two modes. You're doing the drawing and then you switch to scanning and doing the lettering and stuff. Everything happens at once when you're on digital. Like I don't have to kind of change in my mode at all. I'm still there. I'm still working. But I still, the way I used to work with on paper was I would draw all the strips, and at the end of the week I would letter them all, and I still do that even though I don't have to. You know what I mean? I don't have to switch my mode. So some of those bad habits are hard to break.
So what's next? What's this? You're on the comeback tour, as I like to call it. Are you going to conventions? What are you doing?
I started out kind of a little late for this year's kind of string of conventions. I hit Baltimore. I'm going to visit New York, but I'm not going to be like, I won't have a booth there. But I plan on working up my kind of my booth merchandise so that in the next kind of round of conventions, I would love to be hitting them all the time. It's just they are a lot of work. And it's, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever been to New York or to, I mean, God forbid, San Diego, but it is just a madhouse of people. I mean, just...
I think that's on David's bucket list.
Oh, San Diego's on my bucket list.
I would love to go to San Diego.
I go to New York every year. So
New York was nuts. I was there 2 years ago, and it was completely insane.
Yeah.
I just couldn't wrap my head around how many people were there. You know what I mean? It was just nuts.
This will be my third year. And the first year I went, actually, I remember seeing your stuff before we had met in person. And first year we went, and we just walked around to the floor. Like we only went to like 2 or 3 panels because it was so overwhelming.
Right.
And we're like, what? And when it was over, we were like, oh my gosh, all the stuff that we missed. So then last year we were like, we're going to hit all the panels that we want to see, and we did that. And then at the end of the weekend, we were like, wait, we forgot to go on the show floor. We had
I mean, it's just not enough time to do everything. That's what's insane. And the people, the investments that people make in the costumes and stuff blows my mind. It's crazy.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any plans for any other comic strips, or are you just going to pretty much just...
I'm going to work on this. I'd like to... My obvious dream would be able to make it be self-sufficient, where it could be my day job. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't think that's possible without doing it at least 5 times a week. I just don't think it can. You know, people are going to argue with me when I say that, but the style of strip that I do with the running storyline and it's kind of a newspaper style comic, I just don't think it could ever be self-sufficient without being at least Monday through Friday. So I have to kind of work up to that point and make sure that I can kind of keep it moving.
How long do your storylines go? Are they usually like a week or 2 long, or are they just totally continuous?
Sometimes I never know how to end them, and I've had storylines run for 2 months.
Wow.
Just because how in the hell am I going to end this one?
Right.
You know? But I've noticed that I think my readers enjoy the storylines better than the gags. I think they come back to kind of check up on the characters, see what's going to happen next, you know. So that's always fun. Plus, it's in the way I'm built. It's easier to write that way for me, you know.
I'm loving the little alligator right now. Baby alligator. Well, let's talk other webcomics. I know from before that you found Peanuts really inspiring, and Calvin and Hobbes. You said anyone who doesn't say Calvin and Hobbes inspires them is lying. But what is it right now that you like to read or that you find inspiration from?
I still kind of flock towards the newspaper style comic strips. I'm not a fan of the super snarky ones. You know what I mean? Like I feel like there's a lot of comic strips that or a lot of web comics out there that they kind of all blur together. They all look the same, and I think that happens. I think it's just like music. You know, somebody has a hit, or somebody else tries to kind of emulate that look and that feel. But I'm a huge fan of the more kind of newspaper style comic strips. I've been reading. There's a comic strip on Go Comics called The Barn, which is it's just a very sweet, very kind of cute comic strip. But it's written by Ralph Hagen, and he has the ability to just take little tiny visual gags and turn them into strips, and that's kind of fun for me. I do read Girls with Slingshots. I think that's very well done. I mentioned before, I really have a lot of respect for Sheldon, Dave Kellett, because he's the guy that from a career standpoint, he's kind of doing the same thing that I'd like to do. You know, he's got that daily thing down, and he does it for a living. But again, Monday through Friday. He's just ink. I mean, there's no colors except if he does like a Sunday style strip. But you know, I like there's a single panel strip called Argyle Sweater, kind of Far Side-ish. It's very well done. You know, unfortunately, I don't have as much time as I'd like to, and I find myself when I'm reading other people's comic strips, I find myself critiquing them. You know what I mean? Like I had the same problem, with when I go and see a band. If I see a live band, I'm listening for them, waiting for them to make a mistake, or you know what I mean. So
wait, do you play guitar?
Yeah.
Okay, see, that's why.
Yeah.
Guitarists are just always...
Well, I sing. But you know what I mean? So, and I don't want... I like to read what I like to read, but I don't want to get too deep into them because I don't want to inadvertently rip anybody off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, it happens. You start looking at other people's stuff and you admire something and then, you see if you can kind of emulate it a little bit. Probably my biggest hero as far as comic strips are concerned would be Bloom County. And I rip them off all the time. Even if it's just in spirit, you know what I mean? But,
I think... it's hard to say, you talk about original. I think it's hard for anything to be original anymore. It's I forget what the, I think it's a Salvador Dali quote, something about like those who try not to emulate anybody end up doing nothing because they're so worried about copying anybody and doing something original. It's not the quote.
I know what you're saying though. If you're trying to be completely original, you're going to spend too much time up in your head. You know what I mean? I just am more concerned with I don't want to offend my the people that I kind of admire. You know what I mean? So,
any comics that you hate?
That one you drew.
Anything that I draw.
Anything that I hate.
Okay, maybe hates any that you
dislike.
For instance. One comic that I have the hardest time even tolerating the smallest bit is Cul-de-sac.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if it's the drawing or what, but
he's done.
Into it.
He's just retired. He has Parkinson's disease.
Really?
Way to go.
Good job.
Yeah,
way to kick him while he's down.
But comics that I hate.
What's that one with?
I'll tell you comics that I hate are the comic strips that never go away, like where one artist will draw them and then he gets old and dies and another one will come along. Like a good example of that. I mean, Blondie is a good example of that. I mean, that thing's been going on for 400 years, for God's sake. These are strips that just take up prime real estate for new artists that could be doing good things. You know what I mean? There's just strips out there that I could. It's not that I hate them; I just could care less about them. Heathcliff. Yeah. Who gives a shit? It's
my favorite.
But you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of you can go out on the newspaper and look at the comics section, and there's a lot of stuff that you've been looking at for decades, and it's like how is it still there?
I probably will get mocked for saying this, but I like Sally Forth.
I do too.
That's who it is.
I do too.
I don't like that one.
I like the dad character a lot, but I guess a couple years ago she decided to stop making new stuff, and just said that she had like a couple weeks where she's just writing about stuff, and then she said, "I'm just going to take the strip and start it over, but redraw it." And do the same storylines, just current.
There's some really good strips out there that just don't get enough attention, in my opinion. Like print strips. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Pooch Cafe. If you ever get a chance, go look at that. It's hilarious and it's really well drawn. Pearls Before Swine is always a lot of fun.
I like that.
There's a lot of good stuff that's just. F-. Have you ever seen F-? I really like that. And there's stuff that's in the way that just needs to be buried in the backyard and let new strips come along.
Like Blondie.
Yeah. And Ziggy.
Ziggy needs to go too. I don't like.
And Kathy. Oh.
I don't see much of her anymore. Maybe
she retired. I don't know.
Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure having you back on the show. If someone wants to learn more about you or more about Pinkerton, what are the ways they should go about doing that?
You can find it on my website at pinkertonpark.com. You can subscribe to it on GoComics, gocomics.com/Pinkerton. or find it on Facebook.
Thanks, Mike, for being on the show.
Thanks,
The
guys.
second time. We hope you've been enjoying the Lancast.
This episode was produced by myself, David Moulton, with show notes by Keith and Lauren Slesser.
All pertinent links to this episode can be found in the show notes at thelancast.com.
If you specifically liked this episode, we ask that you consider making a donation.
Every little bit helps. Even $1 a show can keep us going.
If you'd like to help support us, you can do so by going to thelancast.com/donate.
And don't forget to subscribe in iTunes and tell a friend about the show.
So, for the Lancast, I'm David Moulton,
And I'm Keith Slesser.
asking, are you in the cast?
Wow.
But